He was just 16 years old when he picked up an axe and wiped out almost his entire family. The name David Brom still chills anyone who remembers the headlines. A quiet Minnesota teenager who turned their suburban home into a crime scene so brutal, police could barely process what they were seeing. And now, after decades behind bars, David is out. I'm Amy, good to see you here. Let's recap. It's Thursday, February 18, 1988, in the quiet Rochester, Minnesota suburb where the Brom family lives. David's parents, Bernard and Paulette, and two of his siblings, 13-year-old Diane and 11-year-old Ricky, are asleep in their beds. Before dawn, David walks into the garage, grabs a wood-handled axe, and starts going room to room. On the first floor, the house is a mess. Kitchen utensils are all over the floor. Mail is scattered everywhere. The bathroom is smeared with black hair dye. Upstairs, it's pure carnage. Paulette and Diane lie together at the top of the stairs. Bernard is found kneeling beside the bed in the parents' room. Ricky is still in his bed. He's clutching his blankie. He's wearing his orthodontic headgear. Music blares from David's room. When the cops get there later that night, an alarm clock is still going off in his parents' bedroom. Some of the wooden doors are hacked apart. The murder weapon, a bloody axe, is later found in the basement, resting on a stack of National Geographic magazines. In total, David delivered 58 hatchet wounds to his family's head, neck, and torsos. In his closet, police find a notebook. Across the top, it reads 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse Now. Inside, a step-by-step plan for Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday's list: pack clothes, call friends, pack a cooler, get ice, kill the family, bury them, go to the bank, and buy hair dye. Thursday's list: pack the car, pick up 2 friends, dye his hair, then take off. And with David nowhere to be found, it looks like he's sticking to the plan. Sort of. But the 16-year-old hasn't left town. Not yet. By the next morning, David is already moving through his checklist. First stop, his school, Lord Roman Catholic High. But he doesn't look like the same kid who walked those halls yesterday. His hair is dyed jet black. The sides of his head are shaved and is all spiked straight up. Definitely not in line with the school's, quote, well-groomed, neat and clean code for hair. Not that it matters. He's not there to stay. He catches a friend on her way in and he convinces her to skip school with him. They drive aimlessly around town. They're stopping for snacks. They're hanging out until David drops the bomb. He did it. He killed his whole family, and it wasn't random. David and 2 friends had this twisted running fantasy. They'd take his parents' money, escape Rochester, blow it all on a dream trip to Florida, and when the money ran out, they'd kill themselves. But here's the thing. The other 2 thought it was a joke, just teenage talk. David was the only one who meant it, and now he's followed through. As they cruise around town, they're hitting a store, the park, her house. David starts talking, and he tells her exactly what happened inside his family's home, and it's every bit as disturbing as you'd think. The night before, around 11:30, he got into a heated argument with his father over his heavy metal music, the devil's music, his parents called it. It escalated until his dad shoved him over a coffee table. Well, David didn't sleep. He stays up, brooding, until about 3 a.m. That's when he grabbed an axe and went into his parents' bedroom. He swung at his father first. He kept getting up, David said, so I kept swinging. And when his dad was down, he turned to his mother, and then he went to his brother Ricky's room. Ricky screamed, David screamed, and then he started swinging on his little brother. Next, he saw his sister Diane standing over their mother in the hallway at the top of the stairs. They both started screaming too until he swung at her. He told his friend he kept swinging for about half an hour. It was really gross, he said, adding, someone has to be sick to do something like this. And then, like nothing happened, David went to lunch with friends from another high school. They went to Godfather's Pizza. Remember that place? He even asked a girl he dated to go to the movies that night, but she was like, no, thank you, telling police later that David scared her, and he often talked about hurting people. Word spread fast about what he'd done, fast enough that a school counselor called police for a welfare check at the Brom house. That's how they found the bodies. The deeper you look into David's life, the more you start to see the tension building inside that house long before these murders. See, Bernard and Paulette Brom were deeply religious. Every Sunday, without fail, the whole family was in church. They weren't just members, they were active in the church leadership, that people over. That was their world. They were also strict, very strict. Years earlier, they'd had their oldest son, Joe, 3 years older than David. They had him committed to a locked psych ward. His crime? Dressing like a goth kid. He wasn't drinking, using drugs, or failing in school. In fact, he got good grades, but he wore black, and sometimes he liked to do that Cure thing with the black eyeliner. Now, to most, that was just normal 80s teenage rebellion, but to Bernard and Paulette, it was unacceptable. When Joe kept pushing back, they kicked him out for good. He ended up going to live with a friend's family, which is why he wasn't in the house the night of the murders. But back in 1988, he told police he never saw physical abuse at home, but described his parents as cold, distant, and unforgiving. By 16, David was in his own rebellion phase, but like Joe, it was rebellion light. He was a solid B student. Quiet, nice. He was the kind of kid that neighbors remember shoveled snow in the winter, helped water their plants in the summer, never missed a shift at his part-time restaurant job. People liked him. But like his brother, he wanted to wear black. He wanted to blast heavy metal. And to his parents, that was a sign that he was heading down the same wrong path as Joe. The friends told police that his parents tried to discipline it out of him, making him chop wood in the winter, shovel snow constantly. Others said that David told them his dad hit him. But that argument over his music on Wednesday night, it was the breaking point. Hours later, the entire family would be dead. After the murders, David doesn't go far. He spends the night hiding in a cement culvert. Inside, police find signs of a getaway in progress. His parents' cash card, a toothbrush, a comb, cans of Mountain Dew, candy. More of the same is stashed in the van that he had plans to drive all the way to Florida. The next day, he's spotted at a payphone near the post office. Now, police have been hunting for him all night, so everybody's sort of on the lookout for him. When they spot him, they call the cops. The last thing anyone hears him say to somebody on the other end of the phone is, "It's too late now." Minutes later, police close in. David's in handcuffs. On the ride to the jail, deputies tell him, "We've got a lot of questions for you, buddy." And he's like, "Yeah, shoot." But 3 minutes into that conversation, he stops talking. He asks for a lawyer, which is a pretty quick move for a 16-year-old who's just been caught. And once David is behind bars, you'd never guess what he's in for. They say he's calm, friendly, chats about normal stuff, cars, his friends, girls, and like nothing ever happened, he sleeps peacefully through the night. He watches Oprah. All signs point to normal, which is surprising because he's going for an insanity plea. At first, prosecutors planned to try him as a juvenile, but that would mean freedom on his 19th birthday. Less than 3 years for murdering 4 people? No, the public is not having it. So the case moves to adult court. Doctors can't agree on what's going on in his head. Some say depression and psychosis. Others think multiple personalities or schizophrenia. David claims voices told him to kill and that he saw things that weren't there. But the jury isn't buying it. They find him guilty, and David Brom is sentenced to 3 life terms. But you know how it goes. In prison, life doesn't always mean life. Now, at 53 years old, David is out. At a parole board hearing in early 2025, he apologized. He said he was struggling with depression at the time of the murders. In his words, "I thought these things were going to last forever, and I knew I couldn't live that way forever. In that clouded depression, I started to believe other people were at fault for the way I felt." Now, normally, inmates are paroled back to the county where they were convicted. For David, that's Olmsted County. But in his case, the board is like, "You're not going back there. You're definitely not going back there." Probably because his crime is still one of the most infamous in the county's history. So I know what you're thinking. How does a guy who axe murdered his whole family get out? It comes down to a change in Minnesota law, one that says teenagers, even when they were tried as adults like David was, don't have to serve the minimum 17 years of a life sentence. So David got 3 life sentences, even though he killed 4 people. So if that math isn't mathing for you either, here's why. The judge combined the sentence for killing his brother and sister. In other words, those were served at the same time, not back to back. Bottom line, with the new law in place, he only has to serve a minimum of 30 years. So he had done his 30 years, and that brings us to today. At the parole board hearing in January, he took responsibility. He said, I was blaming other people, so I killed them. And now David Brom is a free man. But here's the question. Should someone who wiped out their entire family with an axe, even though they were 16, should they get a second chance? Or is some violence so extreme there's no coming back from it? Let's talk about it in the comments. I really want to hear what you think. For True Crime Recaps, I'm Amy. Stay safe. Chris and I will see you in the next recap. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a story. Thanks for spending your time with me today. See you soon.